Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another predictions video. And in today's video, I'm going to be predicting the Catterall versus Barboza Jr. fight. And so if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so, like the video if you do indeed like the video, and let's get straight into it. So, of course, we've got this new kind of format now in which I'm just going to start off by touching upon briefly the undercard fights. I'm not going to give a prediction for any of them, but like I said, just touch upon them briefly. And so we'll start off, by talking about McCormack versus Davies Jr. I think this is definitely a good contest, to be completely honest, and a necessary step up for that of Pat McCormack. He's been looking pretty excellent so far in every fight in which we have seen him in. I mean, he's not been incredibly tested at the highest of levels as of yet, but you don't really expect him to. He's only 6-0. Obviously, he was somebody who came in with a big expectation upon him into the professional game, and so far, like I say, he's delivered and he's really gone through the rankings well. He has had a couple perhaps tougher performances than what he would have expected, but that's what you want to see. That's what the fans come to watch. They're not just here for you to bowl every opponent over until you get to 10-0 to 15-0. You want to see them get tested in their first 5 fights still, and so this now is a big test for him, to be completely honest. And like I say, I'm glad to see that Matchroom are willing to put him in against somebody like a Davies Jr. And in general, like I say, Davies Jr. is going to be a tough test. He has, of course, fought around at the highest, well, to an extent, the pretty highest of levels, and he's not always had the most success, especially in recent times. I mean, he lost versus, of course, Dara Foley very dramatically in that fashion where he snapped his ankle in, I believe it was the third round, and that was, of course, like I say, a very shocking moment, and a moment in which since then he's not really been able to, I suppose, to an extent, look the same. I mean, he then also not too long ago got the loss versus Lipinets, in which he got beaten quite badly. But to be fair, the fight was a fight of the year contender at the same time. He just also did take a lot of damage in that fight, so there definitely is going to be question marks around if he is to lose this fight. First of all, if he loses it badly, should he retire? And I suppose, second of all, if he doesn't lose it badly, or if he is able to maybe get a draw or even a win, could he be able to return back to the levels in which he once was at? And I'm not really too sure. I mean, he is coming off a win. He was able to get a win last time out on a Conlon promotion, a Conlon boxing show with Pro Box TV, and so like I say, I think in general, perhaps it's a little bit surprising to see that this fight was made. Like I say, Davis Jr. is coming off back-to-back main events on Pro Box TV, and he seems to be getting along quite well with them and with Conlon Boxing as well. It looked like things were going well. Maybe actually the headline, he wasn't headlining on Conlon Boxing, but still, it was a fight in which he won and looked good in. And so the fact he's quite far down the pecking order of this show, it was just like I say, surprising to see it be announced, but you've got to give him credit for wanting to go for the test. And I mean, another fighter in which you have to give credit for being willing to go for the test is Dickens, as he takes on Barrett. I think that is a great contest, to be completely honest. I mean, Dickens was seemingly in talks to fight with Nick Ball at one point, and to be honest, I never really saw the appeal for me for that to happen. There was, like I say, rumours of it happening and it being a big Liverpool show, but at the same time, I feel like Dickens hasn't really warranted that fight versus Nick Ball. He hadn't really warranted a world title fight again just yet. I think he needs to really still be able to rebuild. If he wins a fight like this, then perhaps, yeah, then he might be in line for that or a world title fight. But for the moment, I'm more than content with him going for a matchup like this instead, where, yes, it's going to be tough. He's going to be in the away corner. Barrett is looking very good at the moment. I mean, his last performance being versus Jordan Gill really stopped Jordan Gill's momentum that he had after beating Mick Conlon. And so, Barrett has been able to, to change his career around after the loss versus Rachmanov, it was poor and tough to watch, to be completely honest. He did, struggle quite a bit in that fight, and perhaps that showed the golfing class with him and world level, but he looked excellent in that performance versus Jordan Gill. Completely shut Jordan Gill down. I mean, we haven't seen Gill since. I think there's been talks to an extent of him coming back and having a return, so maybe we will see him some point this year. But I mean, at the same time, it wouldn't surprise me if he actually doesn't ever box again. To be fair, Jordan Gill. But like I say, it's nice to see that Barrett's back fighting against a top level guy realistically in Dickens. I mean, Dickens, he is on a bit of a rebuild himself. I believe he's coming off a few wins that are been good, or at least a couple wins that have been, getting himself back in things going again. And he's had a couple fights out in Dubai and things like that. But that kind of loss that he had versus Sosa for that IBO world title, it was very much a big knock to his career. Like I say, full credit that he's on a rebuild and he's willing to take tough tests, but it did, like I say, take a big knock out of his career. And similar to that of Davies Jr., when you lose, when you have been at the highest of highs, Dickens has fought for a world title. When you've been at the highest of highs, for when you have to drop back down again, well, if you lose badly, then have to drop back down again, you to be able to get back up to the top again, you're gonna have to fight in a away corner. You're gonna have to cause a shock upset. You're gonna have to risk it against somebody who's going to be probably younger than you and is going to be the favourite, like I say, and the one with the momentum on their side. So it's similar, like I say, we're both doing, we're both seeing with Dickens and Davies Jr. Are they going to be able to pick up wins? We'll have to wait and see. They've definitely both got tough tests, but two very good matchups there, in my opinion. And then also the final fight in which I wanted to touch upon, just from the undercard, was Belotti versus Gomez Jr. Obviously, they've rescheduled this fight after. To be honest, I'm not really too sure what happened in that first fight, but well, the first scheduled fight between the two of them. Obviously, Gomez Jr., if you don't know, was meant to fight Belotti, and then Belotti, went to fight night, started getting ready and everything like that, and then he finds out on fight night that Gomez Jr. has pulled out the fight. And to be honest, I mean, I don't personally know really why. Perhaps I haven't looked into it enough as to why he pulled out. But yeah, it was surprising. And it was just, yeah, questionable as to why he did it. And obviously, Belossi was very frustrated. He came on the mic and said that he basically bottled it and everything like that. And I suppose that's created that bit more of a spark between the two of them now. I mean, Reece Belotti hasn't ever really been the biggest of trash talkers from what it seems, and to be fair, is on a great surprising run himself. I mean, when he was fighting earlier on in his career, his professional career, first of all, he's always been willing to take tough tests, and you've got to give him that respect. But it was tough seeing him fight in the earlier parts of his professional career. When he was fighting the Raymond Fords, and he lost that one quite badly. And he did pick up some losses, which perhaps weren't always the best of losses and things like that for his career. But he had the opportunity versus Akib Fiaz. He managed to do really well to be able to get the win, and then from there he's been able to build on, and he's coming off a great win versus Levi Giles as well. I mean, Gomez Jr. fought to Levi Giles and didn't beat him to the same level in which Belotti did, and so this is definitely an interesting contest. I mean, Gomez Jr. is coming off an emphatic victory last time out, and so they're both two guys in which I think are going to make for an interesting clash. They've both got that momentum on their side, and Reece Belotti has turned his career around, in which a lot of fighters aren't able to do. Like I say, he had to go the hard way. He had to get the shock upset against a younger guy, and as a result, he's been given the opportunities to rebuild. Now, is he going to be able to beat somebody like Gomez Jr., who, like I say, is coming off a great win? I mean, I'm not really too sure how bad the injury was that he had or anything like that, but is he going to be able to beat somebody who will be a tough test in Gomez Jr.? We'll have to wait and see. And if he is able to do that, then does he warrant, moving on to perhaps like a European title or something even further than that? I mean, there's only a certain amount of time in which he can continue to fight for the British title and have success, because he has been fighting at that level for quite a while now. So yeah, of course we will have to wait and see how that fight goes. Like I say, I think it is a good matchroom undercard, and to be honest, with everything, I kind of touch upon this most of the times that we see big British boxing events aren't really Riyadh season events. It's just nice to see that they still have big names, or at least good fights that can be on the undercard, because of course the Riyadh season events are great, but they do sometimes sap a bit of the talent away from the events that aren't Riyadh season ones. And Jack Catterall is yet to fight on a Riyadh season show. Of course, Barboza Jr. has, but it's just, like I say, nice to see that big events, big cards with big headliners as well that are world level type fights are able to still happen even with Riyadh season being around, and like I say, with a good undercard as well. But yeah, of course, to kind of give a bit of a overview of Catterall versus Barboza Jr. as a fight. Catterall is 30-1 with 13 KOs, and Barboza Jr. is 31-0 with 11 KOs. This fight is for the vacant WO Super Lightweight, Interim Super Lightweight title, from what I believe. I believe that is the title on the line. Catterall's last fight was a win via unanimous decision versus Prograis, and Barboza Jr.'s last fight was a win via unanimous decision versus Ramirez. This is in Catterall's home city of Manchester, and Catterall is a southpaw. And of course, this is a fight in which I'm excited for. I mean, I think it's definitely a matchup in which is going to be interesting to see, first of all, how well it sells, because, I mean, Jack Catterall seems to be able to have the ability to sell fights well, but I think it is going to be difficult to sell this fight, crazily well, because first of all, it's in the co-op live arena. Obviously, he's already fought there once now against Regis Prograis, and that seemed to sell very well as well. But the co-op has had a few fights there now. It's had a few cards. We've just seen Derek Chisora last weekend fight there and seemingly sell quite a lot there. But is this fight really going to get the fans interested enough? I mean, obviously, I think having this vacant interim title on the line is a good way to kind of, first of all, gain the fans interested that little bit more, but also force any kind of champions to bring more eyes and actually pay that bit more attention to somebody like a Catterall, because he isn't really getting the most of attention from world level. I think Barboza Jr. definitely has got that more recognition at world level, and Catterall is deserving of that more world level attention. I mean, I think in general it is harder for British fighters to be able to get that opportunity at a world title than it is perhaps to that of an American fighter or a Mexican fighter, just because they're just not getting recognized at the same kind of level. And if they aren't a crazily loud personality and they aren't going around knocking everybody out, then I think it is going to be difficult to get recognized at world level, especially in a division like the super lightweight division, which is in such a great position at the moment. There are some great fights to be made, but Catterall, seemingly has been struggling to really kind of get that fight over the line against somebody like a Teofimo Lopez, in which he's been talked about and has called out multiple times alongside Eddie Hearn calling him out. It's been seemingly tough. It's nice to see that this fight's happening, but how much is Barboza Jr. a known name in British boxing, let alone world boxing, to be completely honest? I feel like he's getting more respect now. He's just beaten Ramirez, but before that, was he too big of a name? I'm not too sure. Obviously, neither of them, like I say, are really power punchers, and like I say, I don't feel like that's going to make for a bad fight, though. I think it's going to be a chess match. I think it's going to be an excellent contest in that way, and I believe that it's going to be a fight in which is going to show some high skilled boxing. And as a fan of just the actual art of boxing, I'm so excited for that aspect of it. But I think, like I say, it is difficult to sell somebody like a Catterall to that of a world level. Of course, he no longer has the Taylor kind of hype around him. Obviously, that's the main reason that's really spurred his career along to an extent. Obviously, he had the loss versus Taylor. It was dramatic. It was a bad judges' scorecards, well, set of scorecards, and then he was able to avenge it. And it took a long time for it to be avenged, and he did have a big hyped up build up, and it did end up selling really well as a result of it. But I just think, like I say, perhaps we are now looking at this Catterall where maybe he doesn't really know where to go quite as much. I mean, he fought Linares, he's fought Prograis, and he's fought Barboza Jr. And, they're slow progressions up to world level, but perhaps we were thinking that maybe it would have happened a bit sooner after fighting a Josh Taylor. Josh Taylor was a unified, undisputed champion, world champion. And so, if you beat somebody like that, perhaps you really do warrant that world title, interim world title, right after that fight. But he's had them few fights. The Linares one wasn't an amazing performance. The Prograis one was a bit more of an entertaining, better performance. This one, is going to be an interesting fight how it goes down. But I think Matchroom, as a result of perhaps slight difficulties to an extent to really sell Jack Catterall, they've had to come up with more creative styles of promoting. And to be honest, I don't mind it. I mean, just that little short trailer type clip. Obviously, Riyadh Season has seemingly bought in trailers to that of boxing events now, which I'm completely here for. I think it makes it more entertaining and it makes it seem like you're watching some sort of movie, which is definitely interesting for the fans. But just the boring one in which they put out for Jack Catterall, it wasn't anything too crazy, and that's kind of expected by the subject matter in which they were talking about. But it was still interesting to see, like I say, these new creative ways in which they are trying to find ways to sell him as a fighter, and I think to an extent that will help build somewhat of a fan base because he is doing stuff that younger fighters and younger kids can see as cool, but he is getting branded as boring. But watching a clip like that, they might find funny and things like that to bring that more of a fan base. But yeah, that's just something I wanted to touch upon. Sorry if I'm just waffling about that. But obviously Barboza Jr. again, he's how big of a name is he in the UK? I'm not really too sure. I mean, this is obviously his first time fighting in the UK, and is that a bad thing? No. Is he gotten a chance to reach a new market as a result of this? Yes. And it's just interesting to see again the way that his career has been progressed. I mean, obviously he's 31 and 0. He's had 31 fights, but he hasn't really been tested that much, to be completely honest. I mean, we can't lie, he hasn't really been tested to a crazy level. I mean, he's definitely been padded with his record. I mean, he had the Ramirez fight last time out, which was a good fight and the biggest name so far in his career that he's been able to beat. That was his 31st fight. Before that, he fought Sean McComb, and that was a fight in which he arguably deserved to lose, and a lot of people believe that he did lose that fight and got very fortunate with the scorecards to be able to win that fight. And I mean, perhaps there's a reason as to why they didn't give McComb a rematch, but it seems like McComb's going to probably get given quite a big fight at some point soon because it seems like he has been given fights versus Adam Azim and things like that. So he's still warranted a big fight, even though arguably he did lose versus he did win versus Barboza Jr., but he actually did lose, and perhaps you could blame that upon him waiting around for too long. Perhaps it's the Golden Boy style of promotion, just being really reluctant to really go and test their fighters and really push for that world level kind of scene. I'm not too sure, but I think he has been waiting around too long without really getting tested at the highest level against the really highly ranked fighters. Again, another 31 0. You'd like to think that they would have at least had a world title eliminator or a world title, interim fight or something like that by that point. And we just haven't really seen it with Barboza Jr. I mean, before the Ramirez fight, Zarria was probably the best win for his career, which, to be fair, was a good win and aged well because Zarria went on to fight Prograis and then he put on a very good, tough contest versus Prograis, where Prograis was still at the heights of his career before he fought Haney. But a name like Haney, why isn't Barboza Jr. fought somebody like Haney? I mean, Ramirez is going to fight Haney now, and Ramirez has just lost to Barboza Jr. Why didn't Barboza Jr. really put his hand up and say, I could have been that guy? Perhaps it's because, of course, this matchup was already made, but I feel like there were fights there for him to have fought bigger names at this point in his career, but maybe he's avoided them. Maybe Golden Boy haven't pushed for them. Maybe Golden Boy had been difficult to work with. I'm not too sure, but it's just, frustrating to see that fighters like this, who, Barboza Jr. has talent and he has skills, and I think he, needed to get his head back in the game after the McComb fight, and he did that well versus Ramirez, to be honest, and perhaps it was a matchup that definitely went in his favour stylistic wise, but he definitely, like I say, does have that skills and he has that ability to fight at a world level, but it's just we haven't really seen it just quite as of yet. And so hopefully this fight will bring the best out of both fighters. That's what you want to see with every single fight, but I believe this one definitely could be a chess match, and like I say, definitely could showcase the high levels of skills that both fighters have. But to speak about both fighters, I suppose, attribute-wise individually, to speak about positives of that of Jack Catterall, I mean, of course, he has that very sharp, controlling jab. His jab is different to that of Barboza Jr.'s. Barboza Jr.'s is very good as well, but Catterall's is, like I say, very sharp, very in your face, very crisp. He pairs it up so well. He can throw that 4, 5 times. He fights very well off the front foot, so that's how he's able to have so much success kind of springing forward with it. And the fact that he is able to use his fast hands and the fact he can bring it back and then bring it out again so quickly and so cleanly, first of all, it's really nice on the eye to see, and second of all, it can really dominate opponents as a result because they just don't know how to deal with a jab that's just so controlling. And it's not the most powerful, but it's gonna really shock you with just continuously getting caught to the head over and over again. And you've seen it really catch opponents out, and the fact he can utilize it throughout the whole fight, first of all, shows how good his work rate is, and second of all, shows how good it is. The fact that he can still utilize it the whole way through the fight, and fighters still aren't able to deal with it. Like I say, he's got the fast hands. He's very disciplined in his work as well. You can tell that he's very well drilled. You got to give that to the credit of his team with Jamie Moore. It's a great team. They've got some great fighters coming out of there, and like I say, you can tell that he's very disciplined and, like I say, very well drilled as well. He is typically a mid-range type of fighter, but I also believe that Barboza is. So, like I say, I feel like this will be a chess match in that aspect. He's very technically skilled. Of course, Barboza is as well. He has great timing and great accuracy at the same time, and that's where a lot of the time he was able to have success versus Prograis. I mean, that Prograis fight was a pretty crazy fight, to be completely honest. I mean, there was, 3 knockdowns between the two of them, plus Prograis wrestling Catterall to the ground, plus Prograis slipping to the ground. There was, 5 times in which the fighters were on the floor, and so it was a pretty crazy fight, but the timing and accuracy of that of Catterall was definitely what won him the fight, and the knockdowns was a result of why he won the fight unanimously. And so, yeah, it's just impressive counter speed reactions that he has with the timing and accuracy. He picks his shots very well. He can fight off the front foot, fight off the back foot very well. He changes levels very well. He has sudden, fast combinations. I mean, similar to that of Barboza Jr. in that aspect. They can be quite, slow in the tempo at times, but all of a sudden can switch it and can showcase their speed and showcase their combinations in which they have. He doesn't force the fight, from what I believe. I do think he does load up a little bit, and perhaps if Prograis had that bit better head movement, he may have been able to read certain shots, especially when he was getting caught and getting knocked down. I think he may have been able to read them a bit better and see them coming a bit more if he was to have, had that better head movement, like I said. He has very good reactions, like I said, and like I say, he pairs up his shots very well. Negatives about him, I think he has a low guard. I think both of them have a low guard. I think Catterall, of course, throws his jab from the hip, and perhaps to an extent that's a disguise tactic. You can't really see it quite as well if you have a high guard if he's throwing from the hip, but it is, like I say, coming with him having a low guard. He can sometimes fight from a bit too far out, especially in the earlier rounds. It means he is lunging in a bit and is there to be caught with counters at times. Most of the time, he doesn't really get caught out too much with that, but sometimes when he is lunging in, he can get caught with the balance, and that's why he got dropped versus Prograis. And from what I saw, his physicality isn't anything too crazy. I think Barboza Jr. is that bit more physically able to have success and push you off that bit better. He doesn't really want in close contests. Like I say, neither does Barboza Jr. I believe he can kind of rush away and kind of just run away to an extent off the back foot, and instead of trying to invite the pressure to lead you onto a shot, sometimes he will just run away, rush away from any sort of threat, and just straight away invite to that pressure and give up that ground. He can be outthrown. He can, like I say, lunge in. He isn't always often able to make opponents respect him. I think for the majority of the fight, Prograis wasn't respecting him. Obviously, when he dropped him, things changed, and then he did. But for the most part, I think he does find it difficult to make opponents respect him. He can be, like I say, caught when he's throwing himself, and that's him just staying in range a bit too long. And you see that with Barboza Jr., you see that with loads of fighters, and that's when they can get caught as well. His shot variation isn't anything too crazy. I think Barboza Jr. is better in that aspect. I think he doesn't always make adjustments during the fight, but neither do I think does Barboza Jr. I think he is often in close fights, and his style does make for close fights again, so does Barboza Jr.'s. So this definitely has the makings to be a close fight. He doesn't always win just really, really clearly. And like I said, I think he does load up his shots. Sometimes when he does hurt an opponent, I think he will load up his shots a bit, perhaps just because he's not as used to hurting opponents because of the lack of power in which he does possess. Barboza Jr. as a fighter, though, of course, he's very accurate as well. Typically, he's a back foot type of fighter. He's got a great jab as well, but I think it's a much stronger jab, which is going to cause and inflict that bit more damage. He's the more composed out of the two, from what I believe. He's not really rushing away or anything like that. He's the more comfortable one on the back foot, in my opinion. He does punish on the back foot. He has, like I said, the more varied combinations, and he's got a good uppercut in which he will throw nicely as well. And I think he will go to the body with hooks a bit better as well as, and like I said, just more varied combinations. He, like I said, goes to the body. He's more willing, like I mentioned, to push you off, or with that physicality of his. He's neither of them are huge guys. It's the super lightweight division. Nobody really is that big in the division, but he does seem like he does have that strength about him. He finds his range very well, and I think he catches shots well as well, and takes them perhaps a bit better than that of Catterall. Negatives about him, I think he will be more willing to sit on the ropes more. Like I say, he's more composed on the back foot, but it does kind of cause him to sit on the ropes a bit. He can have that bit more of an open guard instead of just, dropping his guard. It's a bit more open at times. But often, like I say, he's still able to catch shots. He's got lesser head movement from what I believe, and does get caught with straight shots quite continuously, and was versus Ramirez quite a lot. He can sit in range, like I mentioned. He doesn't throw much when he is in close, so Catterall I think would be more willing to throw it in close than that of Barboza Jr. He doesn't really make too many adjustments either, like I mentioned. He can be outthrown as well. He wants to fight at a slower pace, so Catterall perhaps could up the pace and have a bit of success through that way. He can be beaten to the punch. He can struggle to deal with movers, and Catterall's movement is good, and I think he does have better head movement, Catterall, as well, so he might be able to frustrate Barboza Jr. to an extent or make him miss, and he does cover up against combinations as well. Catterall is the favourite for this fight, and I think that Catterall will win via unanimous decision. Like I say, I feel like this will be a chess match for the majority of the fight, but when you get into them later rounds, I think Jack Catterall is going to be able to have a lot of success with the jab, I suppose, just throughout the fight. Like I say, pairing it up very well. Like I mentioned, I feel like Barboza Jr. gets caught with straight shots quite a lot and can be outthrown. I would love to see a Catterall who comes into this fight and is willing to throw a bit more. And if he does happen to hurt Barboza Jr., then I think he shouldn't load up on his shots and just should continue to just even just pat shots and point score. And I would like to hope that he will do that. And I also think Barboza Jr. will just invite and let Catterall come onto the front foot, which might be something a bit different for that of Catterall, something that perhaps he's not too used to, but I think he will enjoy. And like I say, he's going to be able to be showcasing that bit more on the front foot with, like I say, the fast hands. Of course, they both got fast hands, and Barboza Jr. might be able to hurt him with the more varied attacks, in which I believe he has. But for the most part, I think, like I say, Catterall's jab could definitely just win in the fight as a whole because of how good it is. And like I say, he will then, in my opinion, win via unanimous decision and get that big win at home for himself at a world level. And hopefully, then he could go on to fight one of the big names in the super lightweight division. I mean, I haven't really wrote anybody down because I don't really know who he can go on to fight next, to be completely honest. I mean, you look at English fighters coming through in the super lightweight division, there's some great names, but you would have to say Catterall's way past that, and that would be a big step down for himself. But who he could then go on to fight, hopefully it'll be for a world title. I mean, if not, maybe somebody like a Matthias, maybe somebody like a Paro. That could be a good contest, but I think there are definitely some good contests there. Maybe a Richardson Hitchens, Teofimo Lopez. I doubt that fight would happen, but that's been talked about, of course, a lot, like I mentioned. But we will have to wait and see. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you did indeed like the video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.